Welcome, everyone. My name is Shirley, and I will be your moderator this evening. Today's webinar is titled Creating a Carbon Neutral Dental Office. I am so excited to welcome Scott Anderson, co-owner of Artisan Dental and director of Stakeholder Stewardship, whose innovative leadership helped transform Artisan into the United States' first carbon neutral general dentistry practice and earned the prestigious certified B Corporation status, which basically set a global standard in social responsible business practices in the dental industry. Before we get started, let me say welcome to Scott, and we're excited to hear it tonight. We'd love to take a moment to go over some quick housekeeping. We really want this to be an engaging conversation. So if you have a question, we're asking that you please type it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You'll see it says a Q&A box, and we're going to basically address all of those questions at the end of the webinar. We don't have CE available for the webinar this evening, live or in demand, but we will be sending this out to everyone who registered this webinar in the next week or so. So welcome, Scott, and thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm going to pass it over to you now.
Thanks very much, Shirley. Good evening, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here to share more about our experience with becoming a carbon neutral office and what some of the benefits may be for your organization, as well as some of the broader trends in terms of consumer preferences, team member preferences, investor preferences, and even leadership's preferences as it relates to managing one's carbon footprint. In terms of disclosures, I wanted to share that I have no commercial affiliations or paid consulting contracts for any for-profit, nonprofit, or governmental entity. I also have no financial arrangements or affiliation with any of the organizations discussed in the presentation. And so with that, as Shirley said, my wife and I are co-owners of Artisan Dental. We're a 23-member general dentistry practice based in Madison, Wisconsin. We think of ourselves as a mission, vision, and values-oriented organization in that we are endeavoring to serve multiple different stakeholders, living by our values, and we're part of the larger Business for Good movement, and that includes sub-movements such as a certified B Corporation, being a certified B Corporation, 1% for the planet. Some of you may have heard about would be another example of a Business for Good movement. Being a great place to work would be another example of a sub-movement, and others such as organic or fair trade. So with that, I wanted to start off by defining carbon neutrality, and that is simply when a company eliminates as much greenhouse gas as it creates through the course of its operation, through the products that it purchases from vendors and suppliers, through the heating and cooling of its facility. The definition that we use to become certified also includes travel back and forth to continuing medical education, as well as the travel of our team members to Artisan Dental and then back home. So why might you consider becoming carbon neutral or even reducing your carbon footprint from its current state? And there's a range of reasons, but in terms of stakeholder considerations, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory did a survey, and it suggested that 88% of consumers prefer carbon neutral products and services. From an investor's perspective, there's $32 trillion committed to a low carbon transition. And more companies have set very clear goals to either reduce carbon or become carbon neutral. Some of those more well-known multinational companies include organizations like Microsoft and Apple and Google. In Artisan's particular case, we became carbon neutral in that it's really part of our mission. And our mission is to provide exceptional quality care that is using sustainable business practices to promote the health and happiness of our patients, our team members, our suppliers, our community, and then we consider the environment a fifth stakeholder. And when we think about how we can help positively steward the environment, we really perceive that climate change is one of the most significant threats to ecosystem stability. And we also appreciate that a balanced ecosystem supports life on Earth, and it supports a vibrant economy. And included in that economy is the dental industry. We also felt like there was an opportunity by becoming carbon neutral to create deeper levels of alignment with all of our stakeholders. There's a really nice article in the Harvard Business Review suggesting that alignment of value between a business and its customers is one of the long-term predictors of loyalty of those customers to that business. So this was an opportunity for us to not only live into our mission, but also more deeply align with our stakeholders. And then there's also research that we'll see here in several slides suggesting that it can help us attract and retain the best team members. So I wanted to give you a sense of our journey to becoming carbon neutral, because it was not a one-time action, and it was also not an achievement that happened even in one singular year. So the organization was founded 10 years ago in 2014. And when we were founded, we were thinking in terms of serving the environmental stakeholders through things like purchasing Energy Star appliances or using compact fluorescent lighting, as well as natural daylighting. But then in 2015, we felt like we needed to do more. And so we contacted our local utility, Madison Gas and Electric, and learned that they had a green power program where we could switch and purchase 100% of our electricity from renewable energy sources that, in Madison Gas and Electric's case, includes solar and wind-powered energy. And so that reduced our carbon footprint by 83%, just switching to renewable energy from our local utility. And for a facility of our size, which is about 4,000 square feet, the net increase in cost over the year was about $1,400 in electrical usage. And as you'll see, there was very, very strong return on investment in terms of that additional cost. In 2018, we began offering our team members an alternative transportation subsidy of $1 a day if they chose any form of alternative transportation that ranges from, walking or biking to electric vehicle use, carpooling, or use of public transit. And then in 2019, we decided to become a carbon neutral organization. And the project that year entailed working with a carbon management consultancy based in New York City called Carbon Credit Capital. And they helped us measure our total carbon footprint. And then, recognizing what our footprint was, they also helped us go into the carbon exchange marketplace and purchase what are called carbon offsets, which basically offsets or neutralizes the carbon that we created. And then in 2020, that enabled us to become the first general dentistry practice in the U.S. to become carbon neutral. So for the next several slides, I wanted to share a little bit more about these changing consumer and team member, investor, and leadership preferences by referencing some global research. This first research study was done by the well-regarded U.S. consultancy Accenture, and in 2018, they looked at nearly 30,000 consumers in 25 different countries. And what they found is that beyond the price and quality of the product, what really resonated with customers was that the company had a purpose, that the company was transparent, and that there was shared alignment in terms of belief systems. And they found that more than half of those consumers were attracted to brands that stood for something beyond just its product or service. And that really the brand itself, it was basically representative of the various perceptions of all of their stakeholders. The next study was done by Cone Communications, and again, looking at a very large number of consumers in 9 countries. And in that particular study, more than 90% said that they would think positively of a company addressing a social or environmental issue. More than 90% said that they expect a company to do more than just make a profit. And these next 2 bullets in the purple text, I think, are really relevant for the dental industry, in that our particular industry relies heavily on relationships that are built upon trust, and we hope to create relationships that yield loyalty over time. And in this particular study, 90% of respondents said that they would trust a company if they were addressing a social or environmental issue, and that more than 80% said that they would be loyal to a company addressing a social or environmental issue, and that even greater than 70% said they would actually pay more for a socially or environmentally responsible product. So that suggests there's some pricing power for those companies using those practices. This was a study conducted by Hewlett-Packard, a workforce sustainability survey in 2019, looking at 10,000 citizens, 5,000 office workers, and 5,000 purchasers across 10 countries. And those respondents in the survey indicated that 60% believe sustainability is mandatory. Almost 60% felt that environmentally conscious practices were the key to engaging a workforce. And I think this next bullet is really interesting, that almost half of the respondents felt that top talent would only work for companies with sustainability practices. And that, again, almost 40% said that sustainability was a major factor when choosing a company to work for. We've all probably in the dental industry experienced labor shortages in certain areas within the industry. And I think engaging in something like a carbon management program would be a really clear way of differentiating your company, and therefore attracting some of the best and brightest talent. This was another survey conducted by Accenture for the United Nations Global Compact, and it interviewed over 1,000 CEOs in 103 different countries. And they said that they're managing their brand, the trust they have with consumers, is what drives them to act on sustainability. They felt that commitment to a societal purpose was a differentiator, and that almost 100% of them said that sustainability was important to the future success of their business. So clearly, leaders of global multinationals feel that this issue is very salient in terms of the future success of their organization. And then looking, more closely to home, in terms of those companies that have made a commitment to become climate neutral, 91 of the Fortune 500 companies have committed to becoming carbon neutral at some point in the future. And those logos are representative of some of those 91 companies. I mentioned earlier that investors are committed to climate neutrality, and this is just a reference from the Reuters Newswire of a conference occurring in Poland, where investors managing $32 trillion called for action on climate change. And this study, in this slide, is one of, I think, the most telling slides as it relates to the connection or the relationship between a company's approach to performing well across environmental, social, and governance practices, and then the corresponding relationship to financial performance. Because often when organizations are considering questions like carbon management, they're really asking questions like, is there a good return on investment if we move in this direction? And so this study was a meta-analysis. It was published in the Journal of Sustainable Finance and Investment. that looked at over 2,200 academic studies and 60 review studies, going all the way back to the 1970s. And it was a global meta-analysis. And what it found is that over time, those companies that performed well on environmental, social, and governance measures also had stronger corporate financial performance that was stable over time. So even if we look to the academic research over the last really 50 years, the research is very supportive of the incorporation of environmental, social, and governance practices in the management of one's organization. So then sort of taking that awareness, I wanted to share what have been some of the benefits that we at a general practice level have experienced by incorporating these practices. We've noticed that existing patients have offered us a range of positive online reviews. And I think we all recognize in this day and age that online reviews are a really important way that new customers consider affiliating with the business. And so to have customers cite our environmental practices, I think is another way that we become attractive in a highly competitive marketplace. Other benefits that we've noticed is that we've actually had patients switch to our office because we've become carbon neutral. Every single year, we do a team member survey, and we ask them to rate our social and environmental impact. And in our most recent survey, our team members gave us the highest score possible for social and environmental impact. And we think that may have been one of the contributors to us earning a Great Place to Work certification in 2023. When our team members had an opportunity to evaluate us as an organization. We've also had some new team members who have heard about our sustainability efforts and our certified B Corporation designation, and we're excited to switch to Artisan from their existing office. And we've been able to attract hygienists when we have had openings in a highly competitive environment with a shortage of hygienists in the Madison marketplace. So we're really grateful for that as well. If we think about the aggregate benefits of our incorporation of sustainability practices generally, and then the management of carbon more specifically, one of the ways that we can share that is that as an organization, we have discontinued paid external marketing back in the fall of 2016. So 7.5 years ago, we stopped all forms of paid marketing, and we continue to grow at between 75 and 125 new patients per month, while only being in network with 2 dental insurance companies. And we have one of the highest online review profiles of any general dentistry practice in the Madison metro area. So now you may be asking yourself, well, what are some ways that I could begin managing my carbon and kind of move sort of along the continuum towards potentially becoming carbon neutral? So this slide summarizes some of the easier carbon reduction strategies available. The first and probably highest return on investment is to reduce energy usage in your facility through the use of more energy efficient equipment, appliances, lighting, windows, and HVAC equipment, as well as insulation. Another really easy strategy that you can implement is calling your local utility and asking if you can purchase 100% of your electricity from renewable sources. And this is, as I mentioned in the slide, kind of describing our journey to becoming carbon neutral. This one act will have a significant reduction on your overall carbon footprint. In our particular case, it was over an 80% reduction just by making this one phone call and switching the energy to renewable sources. One of the other things that we've done is we've asked our suppliers, such as Schein, to create fewer larger shipments so that they're not incurring as much shipping, which reduces our overall carbon footprint. We've also identified suppliers that offer carbon neutral status to their products. And that's just built into the way that their products are priced and they're advertised. If you're building or remodeling your office, you could think about ways to maximize natural daylight, ventilation, and again, maximizing things like insulation to reduce your overall energy use. Installing programmable thermostats is another great way to reduce your overall consumption, as well as motion sensing light fixtures. And then if you haven't, moving as many of your workflows over to digital forms of communication so that you're not sending out mail through the U.S. mail, which again is creating more carbon usage through the U.S. Postal Service's vehicles. And it's also more cost effective to use electronic forms of communication. So some more moderate effort carbon reduction strategies include potentially installing electric or hot water solar panels on the roof of your building. And currently, there are some pretty significant incentives that are offered by the federal government to install electric or hot water solar panels on your roof. Secondly, you could work with a carbon management company to measure your total carbon footprint and then offset some or all of that additional carbon usage through purchase of carbon credits. You could educate your team and patients about low carbon living. These become nice articles to include in your social media posts or in your electronic newsletter to your patients. You could offer an alternative transportation subsidy to your employees. And you may find that local organizations such as colleges or Chamber of Commerce's or economic development organizations would be interested in actually hosting you as a speaker at their organization, which creates a lot of nice positive PR and the creation of brand equity for your organization. I wanted to just give you a little bit of a snapshot into the actual carbon measurement process that we went through with Carbon Credit Capital. And effectively what they did is they sent us a series of spreadsheets that they asked us to input things like our energy usage from gas and electricity, our water usage, how much waste we were generating. They also asked us to complete spreadsheets that listed every single dental product that we use, every single office supply product that we use, continuing medical education that we may have traveled to, our employees' commutes, the length of their commute back and forth to our organization. And they have sophisticated software that then assigns a carbon footprint to each of the products that we're using. This to me was a really clear indication of how far along the carbon management industry is itself, that there's software out there that can take, for example, a cotton ball or a gauze pad, and it can assign a carbon footprint to it. And then they basically tabulate our total carbon footprint, and you can see that there at the bottom left of your screen, the company's annual carbon emissions when we first had it measured was nearly 12 metric tons. And the cost to offset that was $144. So really a pretty reasonable cost in terms of the opportunity it creates to be carbon neutral, to be able to communicate that to all of your stakeholders and all of the positive, again, marketing and advertising benefits that accrue to that. In our particular case, we chose a reforestation project in the southern United States for our carbon offset credits. And you can see a picture of that in the bottom right-hand corner, where Green Trees has a program where they're planting very, very dense forests of diverse range of deciduous trees and then fast-growing poplars in farmland that can no longer be farmed because it may be near to a floodplain, or it's a lower quality soil. So there's multiple wins there in terms of promoting ecological diversity of species, restoring habitat, and repurposing land that would otherwise not be used for a productive purpose. If you're interested in sustainable principles in your dental business generally, the FDI World Dental Federation has a rich range of resources on its website, which is screenshot is here in this slide. And then the American Dental Association also has a nice list of 80 ways to make your dental practice more green. And then in the last part of the presentation here, I wanted to share some of the ways that we have enhanced our brand and shared with our stakeholders that we were carbon neutral. So you can see in the upper right-hand corner is an example of a logo that we created that featured our Artisan Dental logo, but then also communicated that we were carbon neutral, that we used when we were rolling out the fact that we became carbon neutral. At the bottom of our website, we have these two footers that list our professional dental affiliations and our sustainability affiliations. This is a slide that features some of the community organizations that we've collaborated with to create more awareness around the benefits of managing one's carbon footprint. At the bottom left there, you can see that the Dane County Office of Energy and Climate Change actually awarded our office a Climate Champion designation for 2 years. So that was a nice opportunity for us to gain a little bit more exposure and awareness. And also we had an opportunity to contribute back to their organization by helping them film some promotional videos. On the right side there is a discussion of the fact that we were featured in a sustainable breakfast series by the nonprofit Sustain Dane, where we were on a panel discussion about how businesses can achieve carbon neutrality. This is an example of a social media post that we created when we first became carbon neutral. And of course, we communicated this in our patient newsletter and in office flyers. This was a flyer that was 8.5 by 11 flyer that we put in a rigid clear plastic holder that we then placed in each of our patient operatories, both of our patient consult rooms, the front desk, and out in the patient waiting room. When we started using 100% renewable energy from Madison Gas and Electric. And this specific flyer actually generated a Google review where the patient she first spoke about, her experience receiving oral health care and how much she appreciated that part of the experience. But then at the end of her review, she noted, oh, and I also really appreciate that, all the energy that they're using is coming from renewable sources. So for many patients, it's not the primary reason that they pick or stay with Artisan, but it's a supporting part of the overall value that we're creating for them. This is an example of the carbon neutral web page that we used, that we created. The left screen shows the top of the page, and then the right side of the screen that you can see shows the text. And then we actually also included tiles from the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals there at the bottom of the text that links the Sustainable Development Goals that carbon neutrality supports. And then you can see how our website footer is also featured on that page. So the last several slides that I wanted to share include resources for you that may be beneficial. Here are a list of 4 carbon management consultants from around the world that you could reach out to ask questions around managing your carbon, and they also have programs to assist you in measuring your carbon. These are 4 organizations that you can purchase renewable energy credits from. And these are 4 companies that you can purchase carbon offsets from to offset the carbon that you're producing. And then lastly, I wanted to share this resource, which is an hour-long discussion that we offered in collaboration with the Wisconsin Dental Association on how offices could become carbon neutral. And that's available at YouTube, at our organization's YouTube channel. So thank you very much again for your interest in the topic, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you so much, Scott. That was really fascinating in here. I'm just trying to get my video to start up. Okay, there we go. Thank you so much for that edifying presentation and just walking us through sort of the entire process and the different areas that make up this practice. And let me just see if we have any questions now. No, we don't, but we do invite everybody to go ahead and enter their questions down in the Q&A chat below us. In the meantime, one question that did come up for me is what was that process like or what was that moment when you found out that your firm was the first to receive the credit as the first dentistry to be sustainable in the nation and in the world, I think you said.
Yeah, it was interesting. I actually had anticipated that other offices would have done that before us. There were actually a couple of offices in England that were the first in the world. And, of course, we were the first general dentistry practice in the U.S. And so in some ways it was kind of surprising, but, we were happy to, hopefully get the conversation started with programs like the program with the Wisconsin Dental Association, with other articles that we've collaborated with various journals on, and hopefully with this program. So we're excited about other people, sort of taking up the charge as well.
Yes, for sure. And then in terms of the materials that you had put out in your office, did you and your wife write that yourselves, or did you work with someone else to put that together, just to translate what what the office visit meant for the just what it was powered by and what it meant for the environment? How did you come up with that?
Yeah, we're actually really fortunate. We had some skilled writers on our team in terms of our director of business development, Rochelle Gustella, and Adria White, who is our lead patient care coordinator. They're actually very skilled in terms of writing and graphic art. So we actually did all of that internally.
Wow, very impressive. Yeah, I think if I had my own dentistry practice, I would sort of be overwhelmed to even know where to begin. And I think you laid out a pretty comprehensive way, the different areas to look at. But what's sort of one easy, quick way to start thinking about it or start building on that to-do list or to building the path toward a sustainable practice?
Sure. I think in the case of building a sustainable practice, I think one of the most helpful frameworks that people can think about is when sustainability was originally defined, it was defined as those decisions in an economic sense, in a social sense, and an environmental sense that are creating benefits for all of your stakeholders such that the future generations, their quality of life is not compromised. So if we just think about those 3 buckets of economic, social, and environmental, one of the things that I suggest is that people just pick one or two initiatives in each of those three buckets and implement those one or two initiatives in, let's say, 2024. And then in 2025, just pick one or two additional initiatives. And we found in our own practice that there was tremendous enthusiasm on the part of our team to get involved in implementing those. And with the success of each new program that's implemented, there's a natural momentum that develops that then therefore becomes self-sustaining. And I think that's also part of the opportunity, is that the team can engage around these ideas that have a higher purpose associated with them, gives them an opportunity to demonstrate leadership, to demonstrate project management skills, and to really engage in something that may be also personally meaningful to them. And I would say, in terms of, maybe a variation on your question, in terms of probably one of the most potent things that an organization can do that's also actually relatively easy to benefit the environment, would be to just check your local utility tomorrow and see if they offer renewable energy as an option. And that initiative could be accomplished tomorrow with just one phone call. And you just could switch your energy to 100% renewable. And as you saw, hopefully in the presentation, then there's a whole cascade of positive advertising, marketing, and PR opportunities that can present themselves from that activity. And then you're also going to have a significant reduction in your overall carbon footprint. So, then in subsequent months, you could start talking about, the effects of that decision on carbon reduction. So those are a couple of ideas.
And I did hear you say that in the presentation, and that is a great way to start. And I know that a lot of people have received those notices. And so, but it's great to take the initiative and call the energy company right away and make that switch or request. We do have one question that's come in from Dr. James Hung. Can you put up the ADA resources page? I think they'd like to look at that page again. Let's see.
Sure. There it is. And that's an excellent page, actually. And that would be another place I think that people could start, is just referencing that page. And an organization literally then has 80 different initiatives that you could start implementing. And through that, you would have a pretty comprehensive program. I also want to mention that the FDI World Dental Federation, they have a certification program for dental offices that you can complete some of their learning modules, and your office could actually be certified. So that could be another designation that an organization could think about, that also has the credibility of the FDI World Dental Federation behind it.
I love the idea that the energy you're saving is benefiting this area in the South, and a reforesting program, and especially the location, which is, like you were saying, land that's no longer able to be farmed. That's sort of like a nice sort of way to complete the entire process. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we were really heartened by the program. And I could also mention that there's a whole series of other benefits associated with reforesting an area. And they include things like you created, therefore, a kind of habitat then for the whole sort of web of ecology to flourish. So one of the things that science is showing us is that we're seeing dwindling insect populations. And of course, they're the substrate of a healthy ecosystem. So now you get an environment where, insect populations and aquatic life can hopefully regenerate if there's water elements on the land. And in terms of water elements, forests are natural filter systems. If there's any sort of runoff from industrial sites or from agricultural sites containing herbicides and pesticides. So I think this is, I think, the neat opportunity in the area of carbon offsets, is that you can choose the type of program that you're going to invest back into, and that program can itself have a whole host of regenerative benefits.
That's really wonderful. Oh, okay. We have another question here from Dr. Hung. Did you have to do more for the B Corporation than just carbon neutral?
We did, and the B Corporation is another excellent certification that I would highly recommend. And the five categories of measurement in the B Corp certification is they look at how are you creating benefit and value for your team members. They look at how are you creating benefit and value for your customers. How are you creating value for your community? How are you creating value for the environment is the fourth. And then they look at your governance practices as the fifth main category. The assessment itself is a little bit more than 160 questions, so it's very comprehensive. And an organization needs to score 80 points out of a total of 160 points. I'm sorry, I think it's 180 points. And they need to then be willing to share their score transparently on the Certified B Corporation website. There is also the requirement that you include in your legal organizing documents that you'll consider all of your organization's stakeholders. And as you can kind of see there, when I talked about team, customer, community, environment, governance, that basically covers most organizations' main stakeholders in terms of measuring your impact. And we've found, again, it's a very powerful demonstration to our stakeholders that we're living into our mission because it has the rigor of the B Corp certification, which Inc. magazine has described as the most rigorous global standard for a social and environmentally responsible business. And I may also just mention, just so you kind of have a sense of it in context, some household names that are B corporations that you may know of are folks like Ben & Jerry's ice cream, Patagonia outdoor clothing, Method laundry detergent. You might drink Silk almond milk or soy milk. That's Danone North America. It's a subsidiary of the French conglomerate Danone. So you're in good company with other really well-regarded organizations.
Wow, thank you. While we wait for another question, I can also ask you, one of the things that I've noticed is that that many dentistry practices across the country are really embracing a lot of the tools that are making their practices more profitable or just sort of, just more modern. And anything from like, scanners and 3D printers and just various different tools. Do you find that these vendors or these tools are making it easier to sustain a green practice, or is there some catch up that needs to happen as well in those other areas?
I think it's a great question. I'm really glad that you've asked it, and I would say enthusiastically yes. And so some examples are, as we mentioned earlier, in an all digital workflow, the amount of paper products that we purchase has been dramatically reduced. We're using all digital imaging, so we're not using harsh chemicals to process x-rays. A big reduction in supplies came when we purchased a Prime Scan scanner and an iTero scanner for our CEREC crowns and our clear aligners. So we basically almost eliminated the purchase of impression material that we used to have. So there's all the packaging and then the sort of materials associated with that. So those are a few examples. Yeah.
Wonderful. That are helping practices embrace a greener status. Well, I think for now that is all the questions that have come in. Thank you so much again for such a wonderful presentation and for staying to explain how different businesses can join in and join you in this incredible work that you've done and making their practices sustainable and, helping the earth for a brighter future. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. We did record tonight's webinar, and we will be emailing that recording out sometime in the next week. So stay tuned for that. Especially if you registered, you will be receiving a link to this recording. And we would appreciate your feedback via our survey that's going to pop up shortly on your screens. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us tonight. And we look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Thank you so much, Scott. Really wonderful to hear you. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.